Good morning. It is Wednesday, February 4th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Jordan has begun executing fighters on death row as part of an earth-shattering response to the burning alive of one of its fighter pilots by the Islamic State organization. William Schabas, the head of a UN inquiry into potential war crimes committed during the 2014 Israel-Gaza conflict, resigns amidst allegations of anti-Israel bias. And they call it the Bibi elections in Israel. Analysts worldwide agree the March 17 elections in the country are all about one man, Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll take a closer look at why Israelis either love or hate him. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi. We begin with the UN inquiry into last summer's conflict between Israel and Gaza. Canadian academic William Schabas, the head of that inquiry committee, has resigned after Israeli allegation of bias due to consultancy work he did for the Palestinian Liberation Organization surfaced. Now, Schabas was appointed last August by the head of the United Nations Human Rights Council to lead a three-member group looking into alleged war crimes during Israel's military offensive in Gaza. We are joined, in order to break this story down, we're joined in studio by UNRWA spokesperson Chris Gunness. Chris, good morning to you. Good morning. And also by I-24 News, Anthony Grant. Anthony, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And before we break it down, let's take a look at the following report about the Schabas resignation and break it down from there.
Professor William Schabas, the Canadian academic appointed to head a three-member commission examining possible war crimes committed by Israel and Hamas during Operation Protective Edge last summer, resigned the position Monday. The UN Human Rights Council, which set up the commission, informed Schabas it would look into an Israeli complaint concerning legal consultation the Canadian had provided the PLO back in 2012 in exchange for payment. Schabas decided to resign as a result, noting this probe would compromise the work of the Gaza War Commission if he stayed on. The Israeli leadership welcomed the decision.
The resignation of the person who headed the inquiry, a job he should not have had to begin with, is the best proof of the defined and structured agenda-driven and anti-Israel notions of this council. The UN Human Rights Council held in 2014 more discussions on Israel than on North Korea, Iran and Syria put together. This is a biased, one-sided council, and those who should have been summoned and questioned over there are Hamas members and their partners in terror organizations, and not IDF soldiers.
Schabas responded, saying the Israeli Prime Minister and Foreign Minister were both masters of extravagant and ridiculous statements. On the Palestinian side, Hamas said the resignation was a result of Israeli diplomatic pressure and served as an indication of, quote, Israeli terrorism aimed at those intent on revealing the truth. Even before the Israeli complaint concerning Schabas's ties to the PLO, which was presented to the UN last Friday, his appointment in August had already triggered massive criticism from Israel concerning statements he had made in the past.
Frankly, if I had to think of an individual who would be the greatest threat to the survival of Israel, I'd probably choose Netanyahu.
It is worth noting that much of the Commission of Inquiry's work is already complete, with a full report to be presented to the UN Human Rights Council on March 23rd. What kind of effect it may have, now that its primary author has left his position, remains to be seen.
Joining us on the phone is President of the International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, Irit Kuhn. Good morning to you, Irit. She's coming up in a minute. And via Skype, we are joined by former legal advisor for Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Alan Baker. Mr. Baker, good morning to you. I'd like to start with you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'm sure you believe that this is some sort of a victory for Israel's battle against that committee, but it doesn't really seem to stop its work. Rather, some will argue that Schabas has done most of the work already and that the impact of the report published in several weeks will actually be clear of bias accusations now that he has resigned.
Look, I don't think we can. We should look at it in terms of victory or defeat. The commission that was set up was a biased commission to begin with. The resolution setting out its mandate is a one-sided resolution that determines that Israel has committed war crimes even before the fact-finding commission has begun. The fact that Schabas was appointed, it was in violation of all the accepted international rules of fact-finding missions, which determine very clearly that the head of such a mission and the members should not be biased and should not have any background of bias. So the fact that he is no longer, that he has resigned is necessary, but this won't change, in my opinion, the nature of the report that will be prevented, because the mandate of the Human Rights Council is a one-sided mandate against Israel.
Do you think that Israel should be doing anything else to try and counteract that committee?
Well, look, I think Israel has put out a huge amount of information with regard to the documentation of its targeting and its military practices, and I think this is readily available for Professor Mary McGowan Davis, who's now heading the mission, and one would hope that if she is genuinely fair, that she will take this into consideration. She can't really ignore it. But there again, if she has to act in accordance with the preordained mandate, then the results are pretty clear.
But the question is, and we're also joined on the phone by Irit Kuhn, the president of the International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists. Irit, just to you, as Alan Baker just mentioned, that now Professor Davis will head this committee, that there are many documents available for that committee, but Israel is not really, playing along with the committee. Doesn't that actually go against, if Israel would participate in this committee and state its case, some will argue that would actually be the better way to go?
First of all, good morning.
Good morning. Yes.
Secondly, I don't know if you saw the letter that was coming out, or the paper that came out by the Human Rights Council establishing this committee. It would be very, very difficult to cooperate with a committee who already decided in this letter that Israel made war crimes. So I always said when I was asked that if I would be in the place of the Prime Minister, I'm not so sure that I would cooperate. This is one fact. The other fact is that if, according to my knowledge, if a head of a committee is resigning, I think that the committee all should resign, because the whole thing was written by a biased head of a committee. So it's very difficult. The impression that you get out today is that Schabas stepped out because he wanted to save the report. But the question has to be asked, that if someone that is biased like him and did not tell the whole truth before he became the head of the committee, was given the character, his opinion, as a knowledge, as a person that knows international law, of course, and he knows international law very good. This, we are not saying that it's not the fact. Then how can a report comes out when he was biased to begin with? And this is the line that I think that Israel should go on and emphasize the whole time. So the attitude to the results would be different. By the way, many human rights groups that even that are not supporting Israel, and as you know, there are many of them, did not accept the fact that Schabas was the head of the committee. So this is turning, in my opinion, it's not turning the results, of course, and as the United Nations said that they're going to take it out, the report, but the attack of the report can be much stronger.
Yeah, but Irit, looking at that, granted, all those valid points that are being heard in and around Israel right now, but that report, as I said to Mr. Baker, is coming out. It's going to be coming out in several weeks. It so seems. How damaging at this point is it to Israel, though, to actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask again, to not cooperate with it?
Could not cooperate? How we... Did you ask me how to begin?
Damaging, yeah. I mean, it's first of all how to begin with.
I'm answering you the same thing that I said before. You cannot cooperate with a committee. The denomination of the committee, the establishing of the committee, was a verdict against the state of Israel. How can you? They said in this paper that Israel performed war crimes. Can you cooperate with such a committee?
And
As any state would cooperate with such a committee that would accuse them of doing war crimes? Now, we, the International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, because we are not an Israeli body, decided that, we talked about it already in the program, that not all the facts, but many of the facts that happened here while the last war took place should be known to the committee, and that's why we did what we did. But this is a different position from a state that was really, that it was very clear that the committee said Israel, it's not only this, you have to read these papers concerning everything that we did, concerning the decision about the fence, the walls, the fence, what they call it, everything. Really, this has to be published, the nomination of this committee, in order to understand why Israel said no.
Right.
Those are two different
things. And Mr. Baker, you know, when we look at where it stands today when it comes to the committee, and clearly you want to jump in. Yes.
Well, look, I'd like to jump in. First of all, I agree with Eric Kahn, absolutely. I think all the members of the committee should resign, because Professor Schabas, he directed the investigations, and he set the theme, and he is biased, and therefore the whole committee should have resigned. But as I said, there's a lot of material out there. The Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, which I represent, we've produced quite a lot of material that is at the disposal of the committee, and we're still producing. We're going to produce a very extensive study. So the committee, should it wish, could have access to all this material. But nevertheless, the fact that the mandate is a one-sided mandate basically faults any expectation that a reasonable and an objective report will come out of this committee. And so the committee is damaged to begin with.
And you know, claims that are being heard in and around Israel constantly. But I want to divert this discussion actually to my guest in the studio, and to something that, putting aside all the blame games, because that's something that we do very well in the Middle East. Chris Gunness with UNRWA, who actually is practically based in Gaza. You know, all of these discussions, we're now about 6 months post the war between Israel and Gaza, and I think it all fades when we just look at the situation on the ground there. What is going on there? And I want to start with that, because I think it's usually we forget the human suffering that's on the ground, and we forget that also a lot of money, and that's my first question, was pledged to help Gaza, and none of it was seen yet, right?
First of all, thank you very much for putting human beings at the centre of this debate, because as a humanitarian organisation, you know, all of this legal stuff, who did what, the blame game, fine. At the end of the day, we have over 1 million beneficiaries in Gaza, and last week, which is what you're asking about, we had to cut a programme. It's a $720 million programme. Now, don't forget, in Cairo, people pledged $5.4 billion with a B. And our programme has a $585 million shortfall. So we had no choice but to say to people, I'm sorry, we have no cash for you. And there is a group of people who've been receiving assistance to rebuild their houses. Imagine you've rebuilt half your house, and the UN now tells you we've got no money to the rest. And the other group are those who've had nothing at all, and they're now going to be told, sorry, we suspended it, we've got no cash. Can you imagine the sense of frustration?
I want us to also listen, just from you, because you're in and out of there, the situation right now in Gaza. When it comes to the humanitarian situation, especially in the summer, that even for this, in the winter, that even for this region was not easy, to say the least. People without homes, how many? Infrastructure, how much needs to be done? What is going on right now on the ground there?
Gaza is a pressure cooker. Believe me, it feels very much like it did before the last conflict. Make no mistake about what I'm saying. I mean, imagine if you put a fence around Tel Aviv when half the place was destroyed and told people they couldn't really rebuild their houses. That sense of frustration is palpable, and the sense of foreboding in Gaza is real. We have estimated in UNRWA that there are 110,000 refugee homes. Now, on average, there'll be, say, 5 to 9 people in a home. So do the math. That many people are in homes which are either partially destroyed or completely damaged. We estimate that there are over 10,000 uninhabitable homes in Gaza. And we're telling these people, in spite of your expectations that were raised in Cairo, there's no money. Why
isn't that money, that 5 point something billion, you know, that was pledged to rebuild Gaza, where is it stuck?
I'm going to be very Israeli and answer a question with a question. You need to ask the donors. Ask the donors. Please ask the donors. Because we've been asking them non-stop since Cairo. where is the money? Because we've always said if Gaza is going to be given back a sense of dignity, if more than half of that population, which are children, are going to be shown that you're on Israel's doorstep and there is a future for you in this region, there's a dignified future for you. And UNRWA's human development, by the way, we educate 250,000 children in Gaza. We are dedicated to human development in Gaza. Despite all the criticisms about UNRWA being too political and we're pro-Hamas and blah, blah, the fact is we have over 1 million beneficiaries, and they are all very frustrated people today because the reconstruction is not going on. I'm not blaming Israel, by the way. It is a collective failure of the entire international system. It's about money, and I've been very clear. Our major donors, are not coming forward for this program. It's also about the politics between Hamas and Fatah. Make no mistake about that. And it's also about the general gloom in the peace process. Look at the rhetoric around the Israeli elections. Is anyone saying anything about what we do about the major security concern of Israel, Gaza, at this very moment? And if they are, what kind of positive solutions are they coming forward with? Because one would hope that the notion that these are, frankly, the same people, you guys are joined at the hip, I'm sorry, and there's no getting away from it. And solutions are going to have to be found. And the first thing that needs to be done is to lift the blockade of Gaza. As I say, imagine putting a fence around Tel Aviv and saying to people they can't leave.
And Alan Baker and Rikuna, I just want to ask you, and this steers it a bit away from your point of expertise. But at the end of the day, as Chris Gunness described, Gaza being a pressure cooker, because I don't want us to blame fingers and it's their fault and our fault and whatnot. But when people don't have anything to eat and nowhere to live, things will flare up again. Do you see a solution to that, Mr. Baker?
Well, clearly, assistance should reach the people that need it. But one might ask Mr. Gunness whether he's asked Hamas, what are they doing with the millions of dollars that they're spending testing new rockets and training children to become suicide bombers?
Mr. Gunness doesn't represent Hamas.
I'm not a spokesman for Hamas. I represent a humanitarian organization that, frankly, is working with its hands tied behind its back. That's the problem we have. You can point fingers at Hamas. You can talk about terrorism. Great. Where has that led anybody in this region? As we're being told, let's forget about this blame game. It doesn't go anywhere. It's a cul-de-sac. And Gaza, meanwhile, is a pressure cooker. And we all know what happens when Gaza is allowed to explode.
Oh, so this is a threat then?
No,
I'm not threatening anyone. I'm describing the situation.
It's not
of course I don't want Gaza to explode. Please, don't put words in my mouth, first of all. And let me tell you, we are doing human development work. And if it's one thing that we can really contribute to a sense of calm and stability, it's giving the 54% of Gaza who are children a belief in a dignified and prosperous future. And the present policies are depriving them of that. Why are we producing a damaged generation as a result of deliberate political choice? Why are we doing that to children? Tell me.
Well, let me just say that you blame the naval...
I'm blaming nobody. I'm not... Sorry.
Excuse me, could I
please speak? Please.
You blame the naval blockade, but this naval blockade was, first of all, it was sanctioned by the United Nations itself, your own boss. And secondly, it was there in order to prevent the bringing in articles that are intended for terrorist purposes. So if Hamas were to play along and cooperate and become a non-terrorist organization, then the whole problem will be solved and there'd be no need for such a blockade.
Well, first of all, I mentioned nothing about the naval blockade, and
no,
I'm saying it's a collective failure. I'm not blaming Israel specifically. We know very well that what's happening on the Egyptian border with Gaza, the tunnels have been cut off, another lifeline to Gaza has been completely cut off. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm saying there has to be some kind of shift in the paradigm in how we deal with Gaza. And hearing someone like you, Mr. Baker, someone who everyone respects for their legal expertise, saying let's punish children because of Hamas. Children don't vote for anybody. I mean, if what you're proposing is continued collective punishment, let me tell you, it leads in a very bad direction, and I think you don't want us to go in that direction, and I certainly don't either.
And I mean, I want to, Mr. Baker, I'm sorry, but I want to thank everybody, because as we move along, the one thing I want to mention is, first of all, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but at the end of the day, and Mr. Gunnis, I don't want to just thank you for your time. I do want to mention, though, that it is children. There are many, 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 many children. 54% of Gaza is children, and if we just stop blaming one another, and this was not the point of this interview, then we can take a look at what possibly can be done for them and for the children of Israel. Definitely, on the same level when it comes to security and whatnot. Both Irit Kuhn and Professor Baker, thank you for joining us. Chris Gunnis, you're locked in with us in studio, so we'll move along. And, of course, this is the time of day at this point for the one and only Tony Grant to give us the news, not just that we missed while reading the headlines, but a lot of news today.
Yeah, of course, the Middle
Death
East
and destruction all around.
is fraught with problems almost everywhere you look. And, of course, we have this horrendous news which broke last night of ISIS apparently having executed Jordanian pilot First Lieutenant Muad al-Kasasbeh.
Right.
And this was actually apparently happened in early January. Some reports are saying that it was not that they actually committed this heinous crime yesterday, but it was a very well-produced, slick kind of video.
It was
very horrific, burned alive, it looks like, according to the video that has surfaced online. And I believe we have, of course, the immediate repercussion from Jordan. They've executed 2 of 5 prisoners.
And not only that, and Jordan has begun executing fighters, especially, supposedly there was news that came out approximately 2 hours ago that the woman that was in question, this whole Jordanian pilot issue with ISIS, sadly came about with their demand to release a terrorist, Saija.
Right, she was the Sajida al-Rishawi who had attempted to bomb hotels in Jordan. I think she was from Iraq, but anyway, I think we have.
And then we have the reaction of King Abdullah, because this is going to hit Jordan very, very hard. This is what the Jordanian king had to say right after the news broke out about the assassination, the killing of the Jordanian pilot. Let's have a listen.
We are meeting with great sadness, despair, and anger. Following the martyring of the heroic pilot Muad al-Kasasbeh, may God bless him, at the hands of the cowardly terrorist organization Daesh, which behaved in an extremely wrong and criminal way that has nothing to do with our noble religion. They condemned a brave pilot who was defending his values and his nation and his community, and he was now joined the previous martyrs of the nation who offered their lives and their blood to dear Jordan. We stand today with the family of the martyr hero Muad, and with our people and our armed forces in this suffering, which is the suffering of all Jordanians. In this situation, it is the duty of all of us, sons and daughters of the nation, to stand up as one, to face this crisis, which will make us stronger and more united.
I think this is a watershed moment for Jordan, really being pulled into the game of ISIS.
Absolutely. And of course, just yesterday, there was a front page story in the Wall Street Journal talking about how Jordan has some internal, differences of opinion on how far to go in joining the U.S.-backed coalition against ISIS. Now you have something like this happen, horrendous, which probably will galvanize at least a sizable chunk of the public there.
And on the chessboard, it is the Middle East, is really, when we speak about picking sides and how intense this war is becoming.
And of course, extremism rears its ugly head even in European quarters. We have reports of yesterday, 3 French soldiers on patrol outside a Jewish community center in Nice, were attacked by a knife-wielding individual and maybe a second man as well who was questioned after being arrested. Very bad news for France, even just psychologically after the horrible events in Paris with the Charlie Hebdo massacre and the kosher market massacre as well. So I think we have the Nice.
We're looking at Nice and what happened there, and that's French soldiers attacked while guarding a Jewish community center.
The crazy thing about this, 3 soldiers, you have to figure they're armed, with more than knives, and yet it shows the vulnerability of criminal intent. It's
Chris Gunnis, what's going on in Europe?
Yeah. Bad stuff.
I wish I could answer that question.
It's us that are the crazy people, Now it's moving along. Yes.
They are going to have to be extra vigilant, of course. I think all over the place.
All over the place. Yes, moving on.
Very dramatic story dropped in the New York Times yesterday. And it also relates to the region, actually. Kind of cloak and dagger. The draft of an arrest warrant for Argentine President Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner was found at the now deceased prosecutor, potentially murdered prosecutor Alberto Nisman's home.
I don't know. I don't think we don't even have to call it potentially anymore.
I don't think. And when you see this, this is really. This story was filed from Buenos Aires, which, of course, the Daniel Pachter, who was the reporter who broke the story in Argentina about Alberto Nisman's death, of course, he fled to Israel, and he had actually said in Haaretz's interview that Argentina has become a very kind of dark, dangerous, corrupt place, and even by South American standards, that is saying something.
Yeah, this is by Hollywood standards.
This is very dramatic. Of course, I just want to say that alleged a draft of an arrest warrant which was found was accusing the Argentine president of trying to shield Iranian officials from responsibility in the 1994 bombing of a Jewish center in Buenos Aires. This is very heavy stuff, and this is
not going away clearly for
news.
Kirchner, who's trying to combat this in many ways, and has promised to dismantle her security forces or intelligence forces,
which is seen as kind of a cosmetic just
Band-Aid.
to do something.
Yep.
So again, the Argentine press, I haven't checked yet, but I'm sure this is going to make huge
dealing with it all
well.
over the place. Yes.
And can't forget about Yemen.
Of course.
Today is the deadline for an apparent attempt to resolve the power vacuum, which has beset this already fractured nation. There's a rift between the Houthi group or militia, if you want to call them.
Affiliated with Iran as well.
Yes, and Saleh, who is actually the former Yemeni president. They're trying to work something out along with, well, you could say with the current Yemen president Mansour, but he's under house arrest because the Houthis basically stormed the presidential palace quite recently, and he's stuck there.
Yes.
It is
I think Yemen speaking of pressure cookers, I think Yemen is something that probably the international community is taking a look at very, very closely when it comes to who eventually is going to, for the next several weeks, rule that place, being a hotbed for many extreme groups in it.
And bordering Saudi Arabia.
Exactly.
Iran, of course, is some people are saying quite openly is behind some of the Houthi resurgence. So again, it's a very messy situation. And today, I think we're going to be seeing some, hopefully not too dramatic developments but there will be developments.
There will be.
Washington Post talks about the U.S. and North Korea have apparently been having secret talks about talks. So it's not just about Sony hacking scandals.
Secret talks about talks. It sounds so Middle Eastern.
It does. Regarding denuclearization of North Korea. So these are actually very, very important talks about talks. Part of the problem when they're not actually talking in person is because North Korea still has that Ebola quarantine going. So you can't really get into the country.
Right. So there's that.
No matter where you're coming from.
No. But that was a semi-optimistic note to end on, seeing that is all the time that we have. But Tony, thank you so much for bringing us the news this morning. As we move along, when we get back, 40 days left to go for the elections in Israel. We'll take a closer look at the latest polls and what these elections are really about. Stay with us. First, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back to the morning edition on I-24 News. Thank you for watching as we move along. With 40 days left until the election in Israel, we are going to spend this broadcast taking a closer look at the man they say this political runoff is truly about. Benjamin Netanyahu. Who is he? And if you may, and what makes him tick is the question. He became Prime Minister of Israel for the third time in January 2013. He was already in office when he was re-elected that last time around, although his right-wing Likud party, in alliance with Israel Beitenu, was returned with fewer seats than before during that election. All in all, he has been in office for 6 years. Relations with the Palestinians have so far dominated his third term, shifting from renewed peace talks, which collapsed in acrimony, to war with the militant group Hamas in Gaza just 3 months later. Now, his government ultimately collapsed, given divergent groups of centrist left and extreme right faction in his coalition coming to a head. And then there are those who will say that it's he who went head-to-head with all in his coalition. So now he's facing elections come March 17, elections many around Israel claim are only about him. and we will examine why. To begin with, we are happy to be joined in studio, as always, by I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Tal, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ann.
Good morning. And of course, by Gil Hoffman, Jerusalem Post political analyst, commentator, and correspondent who is in Jerusalem outside Netanyahu's residence. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Pleasure being with you.
And before we break it down, let's take a look at the following report by Tal Shalev about Benjamin Netanyahu, the man, and possibly what makes him tick.
It's us or him, and it's me or them. The main battle of the 2015 Israeli elections is targeting the very top, replacing the Israeli Prime Minister. Less than 6 weeks away, the elections, in many ways, have turned into a referendum over Netanyahu's leadership.
מה אתה עושה פה? הזמנתם בייביסיטר? קיבלתם ביביסיטר.
אתה תשמור לנו על הילדים?
תראו, זה או אני, או ציפי ובוז'י.
The Zionist Union of Yitzhak Herzog and Tzipi Livni are neck to neck with Netanyahu in the polls and are at loggerheads in a two-way fight with his Likud party. Highlighting security, diplomatic, or economic differences, the center-left alliance is hoping to undermine the thesis that Netanyahu has no alternative. However, neither the Iranian nuclear program nor the cost of living top the agenda. The front pages are occupied with one theme: scandals. Netanyahu and his family are beset by various affairs, raising criminal suspicions and claims of corruption. In what is otherwise known as the Bottlegate affair, the Netanyahu household is suspected of pocketing deposits from state-funded recycled bottles. In another affair, the Bibi tours, the family is accused of double-billing trips abroad. Next month, Israel's state comptroller will release a report on alleged excessive expenses at the prime minister's residence. Netanyahu has been brushing off the attacks as a conspiracy to end his rule and accuses the media of cooperating with his rivals. Besides that, his answer is clear. He is the one and only responsible adult, the only one who can be trusted to protect the country and keep it safe. Despite the flaring security tensions on the northern border and the wide criticism of the latest rift with the White House, most Israelis still believe Netanyahu is the most suitable person to be prime minister. At the moment, the scandals and frictions not only do not hurt the prime minister, but boost him in the polls. Though some surveys suggest the Zionist Union could secure more seats than the Likud, in Israel's entangled coalition politics, Netanyahu still has the highest chance of forming a government. So after 6 consecutive years and 3 terms, King Bibi is widely expected to continue his reign.
To begin with, we're also happy to be joined in studio by the president of the Geocartography Group, Professor Avi Degani. Professor Degani, thank you for being with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. In a minute to you, but first to you, Gil Hoffman in Jerusalem outside the Prime Minister's residence. You, several weeks ago, I had the pleasure to hear a prediction from you that stated that the next election will most likely end up with the unity government, even though, to listen to the Prime Minister and his opponents, that doesn't seem like a plausible scenario at all. Do you still stand behind that prediction?
Well, we don't...
Well, so actually I'm asking Mr. Hoffman in Jerusalem.
I sure do, and thank you for remembering it.
We don't see a better solution, but we don't
thank
see
you.
this
I still
solution.
do.
So
thank you for remembering it.
Mr. Degani, 1 minute.
I still think that there is going to be. I still think there is going to be a unity government, despite Likud and the Zionist Union attacking each other nonstop. That's all part of the political campaign that they have to be doing right now. They're building each other up, which is a very smart idea. They're trying to emphasize both that this is an election between 2 parties and rob their various satellite parties on the right and left of votes. And that's a recipe for stability for the next government. The larger the 2 largest parties are going to be, the easier it will be to govern. But at the end, compromise is going to be necessary no matter how much they attack each other.
Now, Tal Shalev with me in studio. Is that something that Benjamin Netanyahu can sell to his constituency, a unity government?
Well, I think this election, in many ways, it's important to explain that the important part, the most dramatic part, will be only starting after the 17th of March. So it really depends on the dynamics over there and who will be controlling the agenda. In many ways, the Israeli public does not want to see the option of someone not forming. If none of these candidates, neither Netanyahu nor Herzog and Livni can really form a government, a pure right-wing government or a pure left-wing government. The Israeli public would probably prefer, and Netanyahu's constituents would probably prefer, to see a unity government than the other option, which would be going to another round of elections.
Another round of elections. Gil Hoffman with us in Jerusalem, staying with us, Tal Shalev, but Professor Degani, now it's you.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen. This is one thing, because I suggest to all of us that the thing has just started, the campaigns and so on, and it's very fragile. It's very fragile on both sides. The Prime Minister is attacked heavily in all kinds of respects, and what happens in his home, and, everything wrong. And everything that went wrong in the country goes back to the Prime Minister.
But would you agree with me, though, that these elections, and this is to all of you, that these elections, that there's a reason they're called the Bibi elections?
Yeah.
Is it
it's all about Bibi. It's all about Bibi, but we have also to say that the that the bloc, the Zionist camp, I'm not accustomed to camping, is very fragile. Very fragile, because it's built also on the counter-Bibi, as we are going to see, and not much on ideology, which puts all these people together.
Now, you were gracious enough to conduct, or to give us a survey conducted by the Geocartography institution, the one that you're heading, the president of the group, and that was, it's a survey that goes to the point of, are these elections about Bibi? It was a question that you posed to Likud Party members. Why do you vote for the Likud Party? And I do believe we have the results of that survey. And when asked, why do you vote for the Likud Party, then 43% within the people polled said it's Netanyahu's leadership and experience. No one is an alternative, 12%. On security, interestingly enough, it was 9%. The ideology of the Likud, 41%. Now, the total exceeds 100, but, this poll compared to another poll that you conducted, why do you vote for the Zionist camp, with the other side that you just mentioned?
Let me emphasize something here. It's 64% actually Netanyahu, because the security was attached particularly to him. It's not the matter of the Likud. So 64% vote for the Likud because of Netanyahu, and they just, tell it differently. And that,
and that's a fascinating point. Gil Hoffman, I want to start with you on that one. When it comes to security, Gil Hoffman's still with us in Jerusalem. There are people who say, an advisor to Netanyahu when he was in opposition once said to me, off the record, but it's over a decade ago, then we can use this, said to me that the agenda that they're trying to strategize for him while he was in the opposition is that he is the only man that can actually maintain Israel's security. That is a narrative that the Israeli society seems to be sold on. Isn't that the case?
Absolutely. And as many polls as there will be that say that Israelis are voting on socioeconomic matters, anything can happen a week before the election, security-wise, in this region. The last election that we had was a couple months after a war. At this point before the election, 6 weeks before, the Likud was receiving 39 seats in the polls. And the election ended up being very different. Yesh Atid was receiving 6 seats in the polls. They won 19. And so security issues make a huge difference. And there's no doubt that whenever there's any security problem, it in Israel helps the incumbent. In any other country in the world, it would hurt the incumbent. That's something very strange about Israeli society and about the way that the Israelis have become to feel dependent on Netanyahu.
Yeah, those will argue that's not the only strange thing about the Israeli society, but yes.
I think one of the best ways that was described in the past few weeks was the opening skit of Eretz Nehederet, which is the most
Israeli
popular satire show. It had the tale of Netanyahu. It had the tale of young Netanyahu who met a witch who put a curse on him that he would be prime minister forever. And then Netanyahu starts singing, "Whatever I do, you will continue to vote for me. I have ruined the relations with the United States. I wasn't strong in front of Hamas. I have all these scandals around me, and nothing. It doesn't matter. The Israelis continue to vote Netanyahu, and this is exactly what is happening. The Israelis are complaining about the cost of living. They definitely do feel a sense of insecurity because of the security situation. But in the end, end, Netanyahu, the thesis that Netanyahu has no alternative is again proving itself to be correct the moment.
At the moment. And yet the divide in this passionate, be it love relationship with Netanyahu also goes the other way. I'm going back to you, Professor Degani. The other poll that you so graciously conducted for us is for the other side. That would be the Zionist camp, they're called now?
Zionist Union is the official
Zionist
name.
camp.
Union, okay. The Zionist Union, the camp. Why do you vote for the Zionist camp/union? And, I mean, this number is staggering for me because it's not, ideology. It is not Yitzhak Herzog, that's one of the leaders, or Livni, Tzipi Livni's personality. 53% for the chance of replacing Netanyahu.
Which shows that we are a country based of hatred. I did a poll the other day about everyone, what do you feel for every party? And beginning to I love it and I'll vote for it and I hate its guts on the other side. And we found about 450% of hatred versus about 200% of love and passion and so on. We are a funny people. You see, the United States is a melting pot and it has only two parties. And you distinguish very quickly and very, very simply between them. You know what's a black person and you know what's everyone.
But when you look at these polls, and if you really listen to Gil Hoffman, and we rightfully mentioned that at the last round of elections, which were yesterday, Yesh Atid polled at 6, was it, and came in at 19.
14. Well,
14. Yeah, I mean close to.
19.
We looking?
It came with 19.
It came in 19, but at the polls it was between 12 to 14.
12, 13, yeah.
Are we looking at that type? Do you think, in your educated opinion, are we looking at that type of an upset? At something surprising, do you think, that will come at us in this region come the elections? Or the polls that are right now being brought, brought out there are very, they're kind of consistent over the course of the last several weeks.
No one should predict, but I feel that a lot is going to happen right now because we now finish a stage whereby personalities were very important. Now what they say is going to be very important. Actually, it started yesterday by revealing ideas, economic ideas, and so on. And this is going to be the real thing. And this can bring us to a great deal of change, and in the last moment, the last time, even more. Because the biggest group now in Israel is about 24-25% who sit on the fence say, we do not know who we shall vote for. Alongside 3 to 4 to 5%, depending where, who said we are not going to vote.
So that's it.
So a lot can happen, and I think that much will happen in the near days.
And many of the politicians are counting on that a lot can happen, and are also counting about this big question mark population that is definitely a floating vote in many ways. If you ask many of the parties that are not passing the electoral threshold, such as the Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, leader of Israel Beitenu, he's currently in some of the polls. He is almost just on the verge of not making it in. He does say that he thinks that in the end it will be a different result. Such as and Yair Lapid too has been conducting a very impressive campaign on the ground. We've been talking about this a lot, about his rallying and campaigning, and the whole party, not only him. Very impressive campaign. We could definitely see maybe some votes because of this. I think maybe because of this battle neck to neck between the Likud and the Zionist camp that is a lot about corruption. If Yair Lapid can continue this line that he's been pursuing in the past few weeks, that he's an anti-corruption campaign, conducting an anti-corruption campaign, maybe some of the people will be moving over to him, and we will be seeing him getting a much more surprising result in the end. Today he's predicted to have between 12 to 13 again.
I think this might happen.
That might happen. And Gil Hoffman, real quickly, you're with us in the next hour, but is this like a preconceived game? Is this locked and loaded that Netanyahu is the one to grab these elections again? Do you think?
It's too soon to say. There's still 6 weeks in the election. As you have in other places in the show, the Schabas Commission report, not headed by Schabas, is going to be released apparently also right before the election. The comptroller's report is going to be released a month before the election. These things are going to have an impact, and someone is going to benefit, and we don't know who yet.
And it's too soon to
6 weeks is an eternity in Israeli politics.
Gil Hoffman, thank you all for being with me. I'm Tal and Gil staying with us for the next hour. A deeper look into U.S.-Israel relations. First, the news. Welcome back. It is still February 4th. I believe it is a Wednesday. Yes. 2015. Welcome back to the morning edition, I-24 News Morning Edition, the place you should be. Why? Because it is where we take a closer look today at Benjamin Netanyahu and why the elections in Israel, the upcoming elections, March 17, are being called the Bibi elections. Now, relations with Israel have not always been excellent, but I think any observer would argue they've never been worse. That's what Senator John McCain, Republican Senator John McCain, said yesterday in an interview to CNN. But it doesn't take a Republican senator to state the obvious, as it is no secret that President Obama and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu do not get along, as is the case in the latest spat between the two countries, or should we say between the two men, leading up to a March 3rd speech that Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to give in front of the U.S. Congress. A speech that was not coordinated with the White House and has caused the latest rift between the two countries, so to speak. We are joined in studio, and very happy to be joined in studio by, first of all, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev, by senior political analyst, a person I'm very happy to have in the studio, Chemi Shalev, who happens to also be Tal Shalev's father. This is a family show.
Yes.
Now, both of you can stop blushing. And, of course, by the co-chair, the Republicans abroad in Israel, Mr. Mark Zellmark, always a pleasure. Love the tie.
Yeah, good. Oh, fantastic.
Okay. Yes. And with us also in Jerusalem, in front of the Prime Minister's residence, is Gil Hoffman, senior political analyst of the Jerusalem Post. Now, to discuss this further, I just want to first take a look, and Chemi, I want to start with you. You are based in the United States. You cover Israeli-U.S. relations in depth. How damaging was this latest move by Prime Minister Netanyahu when it comes to the speech scheduled in front of the Congress, or is he being used as a pawn in a bipartisan game that is even above his head?
Well, first of all, he's a politician, and the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, is a politician, and they tend to use other people as pawns even when they respect them a lot. So I think both of them are utilizing each other. Look, it's been a bad 6 years in relations between the two leaders, between the President Obama and the Prime Minister. This is definitely a low point, and it's such a low point that it's not clear whether we haven't crossed a threshold, in the sense that there's some barrier that was broken in attitudes towards Israel in the American press and in Congress. There have been utterances and statements by Democratic senators and congressmen in the past months that I've not heard since I've been in the United States, in the sense that they've been openly critical more of John Boehner, of course, if they come from Democrats, but of Netanyahu as well. And I can tell you behind the scenes what they're not saying on record.
And that's what we really want to hear. Yeah.
It's really, there's a lot of resentment and bad feelings now towards the Prime Minister, towards the Republicans, of course, and mainly towards the connection that seems to exist between the Prime Minister and the Republicans. This, of course, it's not a new thing, and it reached a sort of height when Prime Minister Netanyahu was seen as backing Mitt Romney in the 2012 elections. But that was supposedly behind us because the elections are over. But this is now, it's pouring fat on the fire. And I think it's true to say that relationship between a country, I think Senator McCain was wrong. It's not the countries that are at a low point. But I don't think there have ever been two leaders, Israeli or American leaders, that have had such bad personal relations between them that really don't like each other, and they don't like each other so much that they can't hide it anymore.
Nobody even bothers to hide it anymore.
Right.
No, I completely agree. It's out there in the open, which it's a little disconcerting to us. I would say low folk, the little people in the world that world leaders end up this way. Tal Shalev, to you, is there even an understanding within the Netanyahu close circle of the possibility of this being damaging to future relations? Is there an understanding within his close circle of how bad this really is between him and the president?
I think that depends how close the circle you're talking about. And I think at least publicly or even not identified, but not in any briefings by the Prime Minister's office since this whole food burst into our lives, they have never acknowledged a mistake. And that would be a mistake from Netanyahu's electoral point of view. It's not a right move for him electoral-wise and thinking about the elections. From Netanyahu's point of view, everything, all the talking points coming out of there have been why this is an important move, why this is a crucial move, why this is the move that Netanyahu has to do to protect Israel's interests. And on the contrary, they're continuing actually the situation has only escalated because now they're briefing, the Israeli officials are briefing with real details against the Iran nuclear deal. They're briefing again against Obama. In the past few days, we've had a few reports of Israeli officials briefing Israeli journalists about how Obama is succumbing to the Iranian demands in the nuclear negotiations and concern in Jerusalem. So actually the situation has only escalated, and Netanyahu, from his part, doesn't seem to be understanding, at least publicly, or at least willing to acknowledge the mistake. But he has been engaged in a lot of talks over trying to calm down the Democrats, trying to calm down this resentment that he has created in the Congress.
No, entirely so. I have to stop and say...
That was an excellent answer.
I was about to say, Chaim, I was like, aren't you proud? I'm so proud of Tal. But moving along, Gil Hoffman in Jerusalem, still with us in front of the Prime Minister's residence. And I'm touching with you constantly in the Israeli public narrative. And I'm wondering out loud with you, it seems, though, that whenever it is Bibi versus the world or Benjamin Netanyahu versus the American president, it actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, plays into the hands of the Benjamin Netanyahu camp, as if, it sells in a different way. It seems to play within the Israeli society as if he's protecting Israel against everybody else. Am I correct in saying that?
The polls definitely show that you're absolutely right, Lucy. If you go back over the last 6 years, there's been no one in the world who has helped Netanyahu politically more than Barack Obama. Every time there's been any kind of confrontation between the Netanyahu and Obama administrations, it has helped Netanyahu out politically. If Barack Obama wants to ensure that Netanyahu will not be reelected, he should stop dealing with anything Middle East related between now and the election, or just crawl under a rock if the President of the United States can do that for the next 6 weeks.
Right.
And it's different with Obama than it was with previous presidents. When there is an American president who is seen as pro-Israel by the Israeli population, and he has a fight with the Prime Minister of Israel, the people of Israel side with the leader of the free world against their own leader, historically.
Right.
But when there's a confrontation between a president of the United States who, rightly or wrongly, is seen as hostile, the people of Israel side with their leader, and that is what has happened with Obama and Netanyahu. I think it'll be interesting to see if Hillary Clinton does come to power and is seen as pro-Israel, well, whether when she fights with Netanyahu, and she will, whether the people of Israel will end up siding with her.
Now, one second. First of all, Gil, I'm not going to call you Barak Ravid, but I'm Yael. That said,
sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's a family moment here.
I agree with Gil that the Israeli public doesn't like that it does have a great amount of hostility towards President Obama, but I also think that the Israeli public does not like to have a big, an ongoing fight with the United States. And after 6 years that this has been going on, and there have been questions about Netanyahu's conduct in this relationship, and we're hearing even Fox News criticize his conduct in this recent Biner Bibi Congress gate. So I do think that the Israeli public does not like it when their leaders do not get along with the United States. I do think that this does damage Netanyahu in some point, but it could be something that we will be seeing upon. And also, his opponents are not playing, his rivals are not playing on it full scale. We did not hear a full-scale attack, neither from Herzog or Livni, really a really strong attack against Netanyahu, the way he's been conducting the United States relation.
I mean, I think it's safe to say, and actually, maybe I'm not going to call you your father. Maybe Chavi can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have not heard any strong statements from the other side on anything. I mean, I'm yet to see, the other side, the Labour parties, the left, whatever's left of the left, come out with any kind of strong agenda other than Bibi must be replaced.
Well, that's true. I think they've been very busy with themselves, and I think there's still a lot of turmoil inside the Labour Party. And I think that they have framed this elections, as you said, as the Bibi elections, and they have yet to get their act together. I think they're also afraid of trying to capitalize on this specific incident because they may perceive the situation to be, like Gil said, that this will harm them if they are seen to be taking Obama's side. But I think, first of all, there are historical precedents where a confrontation with the president, who was seen as not friendly to Israel, did not help the prime minister. I'm talking about the 1992 elections. Yitzhak Shamir went face-to-face with President George Bush Sr., who was not seen as very friendly to Israel. In fact, he had hostile statements, which are way more confrontational than Obama.
Pick up the phone.
And this is seen as one of the factors that led to Yitzhak Shamir's defeat in 1992 against Yitzhak Rabin. And I also want to say that I think it's true, what Gil said is true up to a point. There comes a point when, if this March 3rd speech will be a complete fiasco, if there'll be a walkout, which I think is, it's unheard of, and if it's enveloped by an atmosphere of controversy, I'm not sure that the Israelis will view this as another time when Netanyahu is, fighting for Israel against the president. He may cross a line. I think even he is not as sure as he was that this is an electoral advantage for him as he was when he agreed to do the speech.
Mark Zell, that's the time to turn to you. No. I mean, first of all, finally, I know you've been waiting for that, because it's no secret that the cause célèbre of Prime Minister Netanyahu throughout his entire political career is the Iranian issue. But as we said in the beginning of this item, it seems as if he's being used even by Boehner as some sort of a pawn when it comes to the sanctions that President Obama, if there was one strategy that was gleaned from his speech, from his State of the Union speech several weeks ago, was the fact that he's going to veto any type of decision of sanctions on Iran, so that deal is not stopped. So isn't Netanyahu just being used as a pawn, but also, an interference within the Israeli elections of giving him a stage March 3rd?
All right, well, I have a whole agenda of things to talk to.
I am sure.
After Chemi and Tal and Gil and yourself. So let me see if I can first I'll deal with your question. Is Netanyahu a pawn? No way. This is a Republican initiative, Republican leadership in the House and the Senate. And the viewers should know and remember that the Congress of the United States is controlled by the Republican Party now, both in the Senate and in the House. When Obama delivered his State of the Union address the other week, he, in contrast to almost every predecessor that in the office, as a lame duck president, threw the gauntlet down in front of the Republican Congress, especially on this issue of sanctions. First of all, he hardly addressed it, and the only thing that he has said, Yael, about practically about the sanctions issues, other than to say that he has achieved some kind of diplomatic accomplishments in this area, which is completely incredible, is that he's going to veto any attempt to impose the sanctions or to impose sanctions in the event the negotiations fail. Bill that was proposed by not the Republicans, by a Democratic senator from New Jersey, Robert Menendez.
Yeah, but this is the inside, ball, bits and pieces, so to speak. At the end of the day, in layman's terms, putting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on that stage on March 3rd, where he made it no secret, as we mentioned before, that it is his affiliation, his affection towards the Republican, Party. It is playing completely against the American president. That is a game that he's being put into.
Well, this is a struggle in an American constitutional struggle. This president has shown himself to be an autocrat in many ways, particularly now in the last couple years of his presidency. He's decided to go it alone. He's thrown down the gauntlet to the Republicans. He's threatened vetoes now on a number of issues, not just the sanctions. And what's going on is a constitutional struggle between the Congress and the President of the United States concerning how the American policy should be set.
That said, Mark, I'm stopping you again. That said, how damaging is the relation between the Israeli Prime Minister and the American President?
Quote unquote, first of all,
Still English.
Okay, yeah. I know where we are. Listen, first of all, the relationship between the American people and the Israeli people in our government is strong. 70% of the American people in the recent polls show that they're solidly behind Israel. And we even have here a delegation of 70 members of the Republican National Committee.
The two leaders, it's no secret. The two leaders, the people who make the decisions.
Look, this is international politics. It doesn't boil down to personal animosity. That they don't get along together, that's no secret. Okay, but both leaders, both Obama, and I'll give him credit, and Netanyahu, can sublimate these issues. These go way beyond their personal disagreements or chemistry. This is about ideology. This is about policy. This is about Iran and sanctions. Now, Chemi was saying that the Congress is upset. The Congress is not upset about Netanyahu. The Congress is upset about Obama. It's a Republican Congress, and they're upset by the fact that he doesn't spend enough time paying attention to this, and he's about to give away the store in these negotiations.
Which sadly raises the question again: if he is a pawn, we've got a second left, so it's just one question to each and every one of you, and the political pundits: is this damage in a relationship between two countries that is heading to the point, as you said, that is beyond repair?
No, there's no such thing as beyond repair. First of all, the solid basis, I agree, the basis of the relations is solid. I think both sides are probably waiting for the elections in 2016, but we have 2 years to go, and there are many important thresholds and cross points in the next 2 years, and it may come to a point where these relations damage Israeli interests.
That's sadly all the time we have. Thank you all for being with me. Gil Hoffman in Jerusalem as well. We're going to go back to the news and then look at Bibi Netanyahu and the media. Stay with us. Good morning. Thank you for staying with us. I-24 News Morning Edition on this February 4th, Wednesday, 2015, where we take a closer look at the upcoming Israeli elections many in this country are calling the Bibi elections. And the reason behind them is what we're going to try and, behind that claim is what we're going to try and solve. Now, in a recent Likud party gathering several months ago in Tel Aviv, shortly before the new elections were called in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu told activists that the media is conspiring to topple him and bring the left into power. Netanyahu has attacked the press in past elections, which has helped him boost his support within his political base on the right. But it is hard for the Israeli prime minister to argue that all the press in Israel is against him. After all, one of his close supporters, U.S. billionaire Sheldon Adelson, funds a local Israeli newspaper, a free-of-charge daily called Israel Today, that is so pro-Netanyahu, it has been nicknamed the Bibi paper in Israel. It is safe to say that just like Israelis are split in the middle, the local media also loves to either hate or love the prime minister, and neither side is playing nice. From headlines about the prime minister's wife's antics to slander against his opponents, opposing media views are abundant. So to see why Netanyahu stirs such strong emotions one way or the other in the Israeli media and public, we're joined in studio by Haaretz journalist and blogger Uri Miskav. Uri, good morning to you. And by journalist and former editor of Makor Rishon, Amnon Lord. Amnon, good morning to you.
Good morning, now the editor of Midah.
Okay. And before we break this down, let's though take a look at the following piece by report by Mandy Kagosowski that takes a closer look at Netanyahu the man and the antics behind him.
The Israeli elections are 40 days away, and it seems that the only question on the public's mind is will he or will he not? That is, will the incumbent prime minister, the hawkish Benjamin Netanyahu, or Bibi, as he is widely known, return to office for a fourth term? Born in 1949 to a distinguished family, Netanyahu served in an elite IDF unit, studied business at MIT, and was Israel's ambassador to the UN before entering parliament for the right-wing Likud party in 1988, becoming the party leader only 5 years later. In 1996, Netanyahu was elected prime minister for the first time, defeating leftist Shimon Peres. During this term, peace negotiations with the Palestinians slowed to a near standstill. Netanyahu was defeated in 1999 and decided to take a timeout from politics. But he returned to parliament in 2003 as the Minister of Finance, leading a tough line of reform and liberalization, and in 2005 was once again elected party leader. In 2006, he became opposition leader, which is when he began to vocally address the Iranian threat, stressing its dangers and comparing it to Nazi Germany. In 2009, Netanyahu was elected for a second term as prime minister, followed by another consecutive term in 2013. His big diplomatic move was to endorse the two-state solution, albeit with major caveats. His harsh line, along with continual building in the settlements and non-existent peace talks, has led to great tension between Israel and the global community and to an all-time low in relations with Israel's main international patron, the United States. During his years in the public eye, Netanyahu has been hounded by quite a few scandals, from an alleged sex tape in his early days to accusations of lavish spending at the taxpayers' expense. His wife Sarah has also been a source of controversy, accused of mistreating staff at the Prime Minister's residence and of amassing exorbitant expenses. She is now also accused of pocketing money from recycled bottles purchased with state funds. The man who started out being hailed as king in marketplaces now faces a potentially explosive state controller report on corruption. On March 17th, we will all find out whether 2015 will be, once again, the year of Bibi.
Amnon Lord, I want to start with you, journalist, Makor Shon, of course, you said editor of Midah. It seems that Benjamin Netanyahu, by stirring, different emotions within the Israeli public, though, garners so many headlines within the Israeli press that are also very personal, that are personal to in a way that we have not seen towards another prime minister in Israel. Is this something that you think is because of his personality, because of his politics, or just the age that we live in?
I think it's both the age that we live in and the way he cuts a new political figure. He's 20 years on the scene. Benjamin Netanyahu, as a personality, is a game changer in Israeli politics in general, in the economy, in Israel relations with the United States,
or lack
with the world. No.
We just spent a half an hour talking about the shamble of the relationship.
He differs from all the traditions from Ben Gurion on. Even Begin wasn't like him. The way he changed the Israeli economy, the way he strategized about Israel security, he proved that he can do it better. For instance, in the security matters, I think the security establishment doesn't like to see a man who didn't grow in the establishment and does things better than them.
The thing, though, about security, and before, Uri Misgav, I turned to a journalist and blogger in arts, but still, you know what, Amnon, staying with you. There was, and I said earlier in this broadcast, several years ago, a media advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was actually back then when I spoke to her, he was at the opposition, said to me off the record that the strategy of the Netanyahu camp, back when he was in the opposition, was to create a theme that nobody in the country can maintain Israel's security other than him. Now, first of all, actually, Uri, this is a theme that actually seems to have sold, that nobody but Netanyahu can maintain Israel's security.
Let's play fair here, and I have to agree with Amnon. As a political phenomenon, he's fascinating. And this motive of Mr. Security that he has just built for the last recent years, it's working. You see in polls, even when you ask the question, who is the most, who fits into the position better, he gets almost 50% of supported. It's more than he gets on the general polls. So there is something about this theme that is working very well, and I think we have to give him credit for that. As a politician, he has managed to turn the game into the state is me, like Louis XIV. And the campaign is all about him. This discussion is all about him.
It's all about him. The elections are all about him. There are those who will argue, though, and that's actually, Amnon, you said that, the media involvement or the media dealings with Benjamin Netanyahu is overboard. You said that, you said that before the broadcast, that the involvement with his wife is overboard. That said, isn't this the persona that he built? Because he's a game changer, he built this,
I believe that since there was a certain kind of media space in Israel, he tried to use it in his favor. Because if you count the journalists that are almost pathologically anti-Bibi, you have to admit that although Israel Hayom took half of the media space, but they don't set the agenda. The agenda is always being set by various personalities like Raviv Drucker, Nahum Barnea, Amnon Avramovich.
Would you agree that it's not that Israel Hayom, the newspaper that is...
Yes, I keep saying that. It's not an echoing paper.
At least I have to give Uri credit that in different from other writers in Haaretz or in the Israeli media, he writes, I feel it, exactly what he thinks, because other people sometimes, I feel, they fake a little. They know how to fit into the wave.
Okay, different political views here, but definitely buddies. No, go ahead.
No,
you want to say?
It's important to say something about Israel Hayom and about where Amnon was working and working now. He's now chief editor of Mida, which is a website, and before that he was chief editor of Makor Rishon. These are ideological media outlets, but they weren't personal. The thing about Israel Hayom is that it's a personal, almost family newspaper that was established for Netanyahu. And then it's very hard...
Or as many will argue, is not even a newspaper in many
it's
ways.
Very hard to argue with them. It's very hard for me to... If Amnon wasn't here and there was some chief editor from Israel Hayom, there was nothing to discuss about because, it was all personal. Still, again, it's interesting to say we are obsessed with Netanyahu. I mean, Israeli media is obsessed with him.
Why do you think that's the case?
I can explain it to you because even on the sociological, cultural basis, Netanyahu comes supposedly from the heart of the Israeli ethos of Sayeret Matkal and so on.
Of the military.
But he's completely individualist.
Okay.
He doesn't come from a group. He doesn't have every leader in Israel, Rabin, Peres, Begin, they all came with a group around them. The Palmach veterans, the Sharon came with the paratrooper veterans around him. Bibi comes alone, only his knapsack, and he climbs the Everest, and he succeeds.
What do you think? Wait, hold on. Is that right? I don't know if he completely came alone. Bibi, and it's been no secret, also came on the heels of a very legendary brother in many ways.
Yeah, sure. But that's history.
Okay.
I think he's definitely an outsider, and the ethos is of an outsider, the one that is fighting the elites, that came climbing the Everest alone, and he likes to work this story out. It's not exactly alone. I mean, he has Mr. Edelson support.
But not a pack of friends.
That's right.
He doesn't come with a unit. He doesn't come with a posse and entourage. One may say, he doesn't have an entourage. But that bit of the underdog, and I want to start with you, Uri. Haaretz it's no secret that's a newspaper that will bring out many headlines that will try to expose wrongdoings by the Israeli Prime Minister. Yet within the Israeli narrative and society, many will argue that works the opposite. That it does support his persona of an underdog. And then he comes out in places like the Likud party gathering several weeks ago. The media is behind me. The media is haunting me. So, that's the agenda that's not really working.
It's funny. I get almost a daily phone call from someone in the Labour Party camp that says, "What are you doing? Stop attacking him." And I have to remind them on those phone calls that we're not working for them. We're trying to work our journalistic way. And Haaretz is a very critical paper towards the right wing.
Right.
That's not a secret. But it's an open question.
Although I sense that Haaretz turned a little bit against Labour, against Herzog and Livni in the last week, actually. And I don't quite understand what is this turning point.
It's a frustration.
Frustration with the left.
I can talk only about myself, because we don't really have a chief editor that calls me and says what to write. It's a kind of an alarm sign reacting to the fact that Netanyahu again has managed to set the campaign. He's the creator of the issues, and the other camp, which the opposition, is only reacting all the time, but doesn't lead any independent agenda. And it's very strange that he has suffered from a horrendous political week with the battle story, and with the American and the.
But I think the battle story didn't
I'm
play
just
well
reminding
in
you
the
the battle story is that his wife, Sarah
Netanyahu,
Netanyahu,
was accepted as another story of trying to harass Sarah Netanyahu, and the Haaretz poll a couple of days ago showed that it had the opposite effect, because the Likud climbed in a couple of mandates.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, that's when we're talking about, and speaking of the media, when we're talking about what I'm going to call it, trash political headlines, because that's what elections are, are leading up to. How dirty does it get, and what is it, actually, what do you think it is about Netanyahu's persona that, makes him the center of these elections?
First, I think that the word trash is in place here, because Professor Jeffrey Herf, a very interesting academic from the University of Maryland, he's a researcher of Nazi propaganda during the Holocaust and stuff. But
not that we're comparing, yes.
Not to compare. No, it has nothing. It just I give him the credit, actually, so we'll know who he called the way Obama treats Netanyahu as trash talk diplomacy, chicken shit and stuff.
Yeah.
And I see that the way the Israeli media plays, or parts of the media, of course, on Sarah Netanyahu and what's happening in the Prime Minister's home, as a continuation, as a kind of trash talk strategy against Netanyahu.
Yeah, sadly, those will argue that also the other side does something very similar when they're pointing fingers, at the left. But nobody really hears that many headlines about the opponents of Netanyahu at all. And isn't it true that as long as they spell your name right, that's enough?
No, this is the Netanyahu elections. It's whether you're pro-Netanyahu or you're against him. But again, he's in the center of everything. And his wife is part of the story, because when he turned everything into personal,
he exposed it. That's a valid point, sadly, all the time we have. But I remind everybody, it is the age of reality television, and everything is fair game. Sadly, all the time we have. I-24 News Morning Edition. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow morning for another edition of I-24 News Morning Edition, the place to be, because we give you all the news. That's it. Stay with us. First, the headlines.